can you imagine, back to July 31st, 1975, the Peabody Hotel was purchased on these steps for about $540,000 by the Belts Corporation. Just like this. I mean, not just one person reading that, but about 150 people here. In 1982, the Lorraine Motel was purchased here for $144,000 by a group led by DeArmy Bailey, coincidentally, who this courthouse is now named for. It used to be the Shelby County Courthouse. Now it's the Judge DeArmy Bailey Courthouse. Longtime lawyer, civil rights activist, judge in a couple of movies like People versus Larry Flint. He's the one I got spit on, I think, by Woody Harrelson in that movie, but a great Memphian and activist. And so he told me he got his last $4,000 from Jack Belts to do the purchase that day. And then if you think at the same time, not here on these courthouse in 1976, the Orpheum Theater was saved for $285,000. For less than $1 million in a 7-year period of time, we saved the Peabody, the Orpheum, and Lorraine Motel. And those are the 3 cultural cornerstones of downtown Memphis. So a little side story there. Real quickly, Memphis was founded in 1819 on this highest piece of ground on the Mississippi River between Cairo and what's that place down there? Natchez, Mississippi, not quite Vicksburg. But in the early part of the century, when Shelby County was formed that year in 1819, it was also Tipton County and Fayette County. So it's one big county that's now 3 counties, and the public courts, county seats were all located in the central, or the county kind of. So for the first 40 years of our county's history, our county seat was in Raleigh, about 12 miles from here, about a 12-hour carriage ride from down here. And as the city grew with the cobblestone wharf, the steamboats coming in, the railroad came in 1857. We were untouched by the Civil War. So after the Civil War, this was the action area down here in Shelby County in the corner. And so the courts moved back downtown to what's called the Overton Hotel, which is now where Cannon Center is, former Ellis Auditorium. They're at Front and Poplar in Maine. It was built in like the 1850s. It wasn't built to be an office building. It was a hotel. It was a hospital during the Civil War. And after 40 years, it was just too old. The city had grown too much. It survived yellow fever. Had 10,000 citizens in 1880. By 1900, had 100,000 citizens through immigration from the Delta and immigration from Europe. Services expanded for government greatly. So this building was conceived here. This whole block from B.B. King Boulevard, Washington, 2nd to Adams, was purchased. First Baptist Church used to be in here. They moved over to Linden and Lauderdale, then eventually out to Poplar Parkway. You see, they had to buy them out. They bought this whole block up for this grand courthouse. It takes up this whole block. Okay, and every office of city and county government and the courts are in this one building. There's a whole lot of buildings around here now that got all sorts of governmental offices because we've obviously grown bigger and bigger. It took 27 different plans over a 4-year period of time to build this building that opened actually on January 1st, 1910, okay? And this is Blue Bedford limestone right here, you see, from Indiana. Let's back up just a little bit here. And Willie, you might want to come out and go up. If you look up at the top of the building here, you see this triangular piece right here. It's called a pediment, P-E-D-I-M-E-N-T. And see inside the triangular piece there is a scene of something happening that represents an aspect of law. So there's 6 of these pediments, 2 on 2nd, 2 on Adams, and 2 on B.B. King down there. And there's 6 different aspects of law. This is statutory, so you got criminal, civil, statutory, Roman, religious, and common law are represented in the different scenes. I think down there in the religious law, they got like the 10 Commandments in the scene, you know. But that's all 6 different entrances. And then at these 3 entrances on 2nd, Adams, and B.B. King, you got these statues here that represent peace, prosperity, authority, liberty, justice, and wisdom. Their names are written underneath them there. There's 6 statues, all made out of a single block of Tennessee marble. Massey Rind, R-H-I-N-D, was a sculptor, $5,000 for each one of them. And that's marble, okay? It doesn't look like marble because in the 1980s, an overzealous pressure washer came up and cleaned it off too good and kind of pocked them up, you see, because it looks more like limestone than marble, doesn't it? That's the reason why it looks so different. Massey Rind's name's etched in the back of the statue. And if you'll notice, all of the chair backs are different. You got lion here and eagle there. If you go down and look at the other ones, there's 4 women and 2 men sitting in there too. I don't know what all that means, but it made y'all happy, didn't it? And of course, you look at the very top of the triangle up there, and there's a head up there. That's Minerva, the Roman goddess of wisdom. Okay, and she's in a lot of the sconces you'll see, or light fixtures in the building. When you notice, that's Minerva in there too. You see the tulip poplar tree right here? It was planted on the 75th anniversary of the birthday of the courthouse about 30 years ago. You'll see a little sign down in front of it. That's the state tree of Tennessee. It grows in all 95 counties. I used to say 91 counties, and a fifth grader told me we had 95 counties. So you learn something new every day. You know, you're right. That's what a tulip poplar looks like. But in Overland Park, they're about 180 feet tall in that old growth forest, you know. So it's good to see one out by itself like this. There's only 2 trees on the whole property, and the others on the interior courtyard we'll see in a minute. All this information, oh, and then around on the Washington Avenue side, there are 6 figurines that are 2.5 life size on the middle of the building at the top ledge up there, like we see with the flagpole here. When you go to the Washington Avenue side, we won't make it around there today. There's 6 figurines that represent integrity, courage, mercy, prudence, temperance, and learning, in that order. And on the east side is integrity. And I always say this is what's wrong with our government right now, is back in 1947, integrity's head got hit by a lightning bolt and knocked off. And they glued it back on. Boom. And then in the 60s, when they're putting a new air conditioning units on the top, they knocked off Learning's head. Fell down. They glued it back on, but you lost about half her lobe back here. If you look at it over there, she doesn't have much learning going on back here. So we lost our integrity and our learning. But they're over there. All this information I just told you basically is in these 2 historical plaques here. One right here, and there are 2 different plaques, different information on both sides. Just told, you can find it on the historical marker by the Shelby County Historical Commission. So since we're out here real quick, let's do a quick little 360 here. 1911, the police building was built. Right next door was the fire building, built in 1910. And you see the Fire Museum of Memphis right there. A lot of school groups go in there and day camp groups and learn a lot about fire prevention, fire protection. Our heroes, I think there's 53 names on the wall right there in memoriam, plus a plaque for the whole fire company that was wiped out in New York during 9/11 response. They have a ceremony every year right there. This police building is vacant. You can see the for lease sign there. It's been speculated on to be a boutique hotel, but we've gotten about 15 boutique hotels in Memphis going up right now, left and right. So the real tall, skinny building right straight in front of us above the bell there at the fire tower, that's where Mr. Crump had his offices for his mortgage business and his later on political empire. That's where the Downtown Memphis Commission offices are, in the bottom portion of that building, not the top. You can see City Hall, the white marble right on the other side there, and our whole Civic Center Plaza. The brick building is the Claridge Hotel, opened in 1924. One of the scenes from Facing the Crowd was filmed in there. Lonesome Roads, Andy Griffith filmed there. Right in front of us, the 100 North Main building. It's the tallest building in Memphis. It opened in 1965. It's 431 feet tall. You can barely see at the top up there in the middle, a little round thing coming out. That whole roof up there is a big round circular restaurant. In 1965, I was 12 years old. Now you know how old I am, right? Figure it out. Now I'd get my swimming suit on and get on a bus in East Memphis and ride down here and go swim in the swimming pool on the next to top floor, and then go eat lunch at the top of the 100 Club. And it revolved around 1 hour, a whole revolution. It wasn't like a merry-go-round, you know, just, and you got these different views of Memphis up there. There's a Japanese garden outside too, so it's a really neat attraction to come to. The last tall building built in downtown Memphis for about 20 years because everything was moving out to the suburbs. You know, it's been vacant for about 5 years. They've intentionally located the offices out of there to probably convert it into joint apartments and hotel. But there's also wanting to build a new hotel over here. So they're having hotel fights over here right now, it seems like. The beautiful building right in between there, the Lincoln American Tower with a cupola there on the top, built and opened in 1924. Columbia Mutual Life Insurance. Lloyd Benford was the president there, who was also the president of the Memphis Censor Board. He became very famous around the country for censoring more movies than anybody. It's called being Benfordized in the Hollywood industry. But great views from that couple up there. And that was the tallest building in Memphis when it was opened in 1924, 22 stories high. 1927, that's the building Charles Lindbergh came in when he was going around the country promoting aviation and buzzed, circled around it to get attention. Landed out at Armstrong Field in Millington and came down and did a dinner at the Peabody Hotel that night, October 3rd, 1927. There's a menu in the Peabody memorabilia room from that night. Calvary Episcopal Church, I call this the oldest public assembly building in Memphis. It's a church, it's a public assembly building, dates back to the 1830s. Y'all might go to the Waffle Shop, not Waffle House, shop in there in the Lenten preaching series every spring. A great cornerstone here. A lot of great churches in downtown Memphis. Maggie Isbell Alley, you see by the Best Park sign there. This is the alley that goes down all the way to the Peabody Hotel, but from here to Monroe, it's Maggie Isbell Alley, who was a seamstress for about 50 years in the downtown area and probably helped stitch your clothes together once upon a time for a lot of lawyers. So when she died, they wanted to name this alley in her honor. From Monroe to Union, it's Charlie Vergus Rendezvous Alley. Okay, so that's the same alley going all the way down to the Peabody Hotel. This is former Columbus Park. About 7 or 8 years ago, the statue that was placed there in the 1980s by the local Italian group for Christopher Columbus got moved out to Marquette Park because their Italian festival had grown so much. And I don't know when Christopher Columbus came to Memphis anyway, but that got relocated out. And then Calvary has now bought that property and is taking care of it and has put a historical marker in there for the slave business, the slave selling business and trading business that was done there by Nathan Bedford Forrest. One of his homes was there too, and across the street as well. The black building there, opened in 1985, is One Memphis Place. They couldn't get anybody to occupy it, so they called it One Empty Place. And then they put the bankruptcy court in there, and it filled up like that because we lead the country in bankruptcy filings in Memphis, unfortunately.
No, that was a second building.
Okay, also we got the Darth Vader buildings is what they call it right now. Hang on just a second. And in the trees down there, during the Civil War, 1862, the post office was actually on the Jefferson and 3rd Street side, and that's where the Union flag was put on after the Battle of Memphis, the naval battle on June 6, 1862. That's where it was located, not over on Front Street. There's a historical marker there. Going on down, you got St. Peter Catholic Church, the oldest Catholic diocese in West Tennessee, 178 years old or so right there. A neat story about it is a little small church, and they started building this big sanctuary around it, and when they got it finished, they took the little church apart inside there and took it out the front door, piece by piece. So every once in a while they'll have string lights in there showing you the outline of the original church in there. And right on the other side is the McGabney House, the oldest residence in Memphis, Eugene McGabney, one of our great preachers and teachers in the early part of the 19th century. And then around also on the corner over here on the other side of the property, Washington Avenue side, is a Tennessee Historical Commission marker for Malcolm Patterson, who was a Memphian who became governor of the state of Tennessee in the early 1900s, 1906 and 1909. And he was actually the governor there when we got the land appropriated, or the rights for West Tennessee Normal School, that 4 names later is the University of Memphis now, way out there, and Patterson Street's named for him right there. So that's a historical marker for him on that piece of property. Now let's walk up the steps and go inside. When we go to the southeast corridor, we'll look at the plaque that's duplicated right there. But that's the initial dedication plaque here from January 1st, 1910. The mayor and the architects and all that. Hale and Rogers, James Gamble Rogers was an architect around the country, but did several churches in here, Brooks Art Gallery, places like that, a great architect. They had to go through 27 plans of this Blue Ribbon Citizen Committee that you'll see the names right over there. They get approved in a 4-year period of time. And then you go through the 1930s, 40s, 50s, you get the mid-century modern decor going on. You get Formica and drop ceilings and light fixtures and air conditioning, window unit air conditioners in these windows here. These hallways to this day do not have air conditioning. Think about that. No air conditioning in the hallways anywhere. And so by the 1960s, the place started at 50 years of wear and tear, looking kind of rough, kind of crummy mid-century architecture. So by the 1980s, there was a plan put together. The building was built for $1.8 million. This and the building next door, this was $1.8 million, clearing the land and building the building. And in the 1980s, $18 million was spent in 1980s money renovating it, plus renovating the jail next door that had been built in 1925, both buildings. And this was the County Board of Commissioners. And here's the Blue Ribbon Committee of Citizens too. And I just have to point out, Julian Bolton is on both of them. I saw him the other night, went to Southwestern with him. And they're the ones that got the job done to bring it back to its original glory. And when we go to the display cases over here, you'll see side-by-side pictures of then the improvement and then back to now. You'll see the Formica tops and the drop ceilings and covering up skylights and things like that. This plaque right here was placed here in 1997 by the Watauga chapter of the Daughters of American Revolution. 19 veterans of the American Revolutionary War are buried in Shelby County, so they recognized them right here. Think about that. They fought somewhere way over there, migrated this way, probably got land grants to come here, lived here, died here. This recognizes them. And then right over here, Chickasaw Guards was the name of an infantry out of Memphis for a long time. But in World War I, here are 6 of the Chickasaw Guards that were killed in World War I. They're commemorated here. There's another plaque from World War I. Used to be in Fourth Bluff Park. It's off display right now. We're going to get it relocated to here of 6 people, doctors that were killed in World War I. That's from the Memphis and Shelby County Medical Society. So we're going to get it dedicated over here sometime in the next year. Okay. All right, let's go into the hallway here and get going. How about this for a hallway? Now, you know, the Blue Bedford limestone outside and some of that marble. Interior, 7 different kinds of marble from 4 different states. Alabama, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, Vermont. Look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here. Within a stride, you see. Isn't that incredible? Look at the walls here. Look how they matched up the veins in the walls on this marble all the way around. Except for one spot I'll show you over here. If you look at the ceiling, look at the trim and the molding up there. Imagine that being covered over with black or white paint, just white paint. So they went and shipped out the paint samples and went back to the original mauve and taupe. Anybody know how to spell taupe? Okay. Now, I mentioned it took 4 years to build the building. A lot of different things were changing during that time, particularly gas, electric, water, telephone services, things like that. And there's a big echo in here, and people don't realize how loud they are when they're echoing in here. And so there were a lot of pipes cut, or holes cut in the marble for pipes to be installed for the gas lighting fixtures. Then they determined we're not going to put gas fixtures there, and we just use the pipe holes and put the electrical wires through them, you see. Well, they didn't need some of them after that because the lighting's plenty adequate in here with these big windows. So they just capped them off. That's why you have a little weird cap right there. You can see some weird caps like that around the building. Let's go this way now. Look at the bench right here. These are the original benches over 100 years old, the Cuban mahogany benches. And in the 1980s, when they went back to do restoration, they couldn't go to Cuba to get mahogany because of the embargo. They went to Brazil to get mahogany. So we'll see some Brazil mahogany. You'll see some cypress in the windows and doors here too. Look at the doorknob. See the doorknobs here have the Shelby County seal on them. How intricate that is. Now, there's 6 display cases here. Back in 2010, the Centennial Party, the Memphis Bar Association, the judges put on, and added 2 more cases, got June West of Memphis Heritage and Carol Drake to do the graphic system here, and added 6 of these panels here to talk about the construction and the architecture. Here's some of the original plans right here. You can see some of the face plates, the push plates, keys, doors. It took a guy over a year just to polish the brass in here. You know, there's so much brass. You have to look at the windows and the doors and everything. Then here's architecture, and here's, let me get around over here. In the center of this display right here, again, this room is open for free Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. Just don't bring a gun or nail clippers, okay? And this is a time you can take pictures. You can't bring cameras in on other times, but you always got your cell phone, so, you know. Look right here of the before the middle 1960s and then the 1980s renovation. That's the side by side. These are the same rooms. You can see the middle of the century with the drop ceiling as compared to the skylights, the Formica instead of mahogany wood, just in stark comparisons there. And then the next display case is y'all remember, everybody that lived in Memphis in 1993 was all abuzz over Mitch McDeere and The Firm, Bendini, Lambert, and Locke, Tom Cruise, obviously. It was not filmed in this building, but on loan is the Bendini, Lambert, and Locke nameplate for the offices up in the International Harvester Plant in Fraser is where they were. But you see some other movies that were filmed in here, like People vs. Larry Flint, The Rainmaker, The Client, 2 John Grisham books, A Family Thing, So you can see, even one scene out of Silence of the Lambs was in here when Hannibal Lecter was in jail or something like that. You know. Great balls of fire came by, you know, on the street scene. Here's James Carville as an attorney. There's Susan Sarandon, Danny DeVito, Matt Damon, James Earl Jones, Robert Duvall. So movies, in fact, Bluff City Law is being filmed right now with Jimmy Smits all over downtown. And look right here, this one got inverted, so this is in the shape of a heart right here, this marble thing. Isn't that kind of creative right there? And so back when we were doing that, they asked me to come do a tour for the celebration that night. I said, I can't walk all over this place. I can't walk all over the place. But you didn't care, did you? So we did station by station tour and trained people to stand at certain places in the whole building as people could walk through on their own leisure. And I was talking about, on the original budget, there was $3,000 set aside for cuspidors. Spittoons, there you go, spittoons. Now, spitting was in fashion 120 years ago. Just like cigarettes used to be in the middle of the century, and it's out. And they had brass spittoons in the courtrooms, hallways, offices, and restrooms. Well, in the 1960s, they were all given away to the construction workers. And a lady called me up when I made that quote and said, well, I got one at home my daddy, father-in-law brought back. And sure enough, she brought it back to us. And we dedicated an historic cuspidor right here. The same week, we did a historical marker for a wooden roller coaster at the fairgrounds, a Zip and Pippin. So it's a good week for history in Memphis when you can talk about cuspidors and wooden roller coasters, you see. Over here, if you notice the doors and the glass that you can't see through, but the little oval you can see through, that's so you can peek in without disturbing the courtroom, and your shadow doesn't bother them either. You see, it's called crackle glass, like snap, crackle, pop, crackle glass, right there. Because if you open those doors, they'd go creak, creak, you know, that's a soft way to do that. Here's probably one of the best features, come around here. No, electrical. The whole thing got converted before they went to gas. Could have been fixtures, that's the type of fixtures they started out, they rewired. You know. All right, come around to the front over here. And you'll see this is a bust of Andrew Jackson. One of the three co-founders of Memphis with John Overton and James Winchester, 1819 and 1818. He and Isaac Shelby negotiated the land for West Tennessee from the Chickasaw Nation for 4.5 cents an acre. Later on became 7th president of the United States. Came to military fame in the South during the early part of the 18th century. During the War of 1812 at the Battle of New Orleans, 1815, on Elvis's birthday, January 8th, 1815. So back here on the back it has Emugfu, Talladega, Horseshoe Bend, and New Orleans listed on the back. Honor and gratitude to those who have filled the measure of their country's glory. A quote on this side. Here it is, Andrew Jackson. The sculptor was John Frazee. There was the National Art Guild at that time, 15 people on it. John Frazee was the only sculptor. It was completed, it was cast on Andrew Jackson in the White House in 1835. The oldest known bust of a sitting president of the United States sits right here in this hallway. You can put your coffee cup on it. You can touch it. Think about that. It ought to be in the National Archives or something. But in 1859, it was brought to Memphis and placed in Court Square, outside. And in 1862, a Southern sympathizer during the Civil War defaced this quote right here. Our federal union, it shall and must be preserved. That's Jackson's famous quote. That's why Union Avenue has his name Union. He named the streets. He ran out of presidents. He hated John Quincy Adams. That was the 6th president. So he named it Union. You know, got weathered as well. Brought inside in 1921. Been on display here for almost 100 years, right here in this spot. If you want to come up and touch it, come up and touch it, you know. But that's just an incredible piece right there. Deloach Street, if you know Patterson Street out there by the university, Deloach Street is right next to it. Josiah Deloach was in Collierville in the 1860s, and Union soldiers come riding down Collierville, coming to Memphis, and they want to get a drink of water at his house, and he said, come on up, but don't go down that way. There's a rebel ambush down that way. So that Union troop circumvented it. Turned out one of those soldiers was U.S. Grant, who later became president. So he appreciated Josiah Deloach's warning and gave him the job as postmaster after the Civil War here. And so he designed, the postmaster, Josiah Deloach, designed the first 4-cent postage stamp based on this bust right here. And you see a 4-cent postage stamp of Andrew Jackson. This is the image right here. Think about that. Now, Ed Williams grew up on, the former Shelby County historian, grew up on Deloach Street and told me that story. So that's a good story right there. Andrew Jackson, gosh, he was captured the only president ever be a prisoner of war. Think about that. In the Revolutionary War, he was captured by the British like at age 14, mistreated. That's why he hated the British so much. He adopted a Native American for a child, and then later on moved, instituted the Indian Removal Act and got known for that. First president to have a toilet in the White House, first president to have running water, only president to balance the budget 3 years in a row or something like that. It's a lot of funny stats about Andrew Jackson. And to this day, on the Native American lands, they don't like $20 bills. They don't take a $20 bill because that's Andrew Jackson's image on there. Every March 15th, the Pia Mingo chapter of the Daughters of the War of 1812, local chapter of Memphis, commemorate General Jackson and President Jackson. He's buried at the Hermitage as General Jackson, not President Jackson. And we have a ceremony in here and have the pledges and the national anthem. Everybody's standing and everything and sing songs and come out here and cut the cake with Andrew Jackson's image on it and drink blackberry fizz, his favorite drink. And we sing 8,000 Redcoats, See How They Run, to the tune of 3 Blind Mice in here, in this hallway. Yeah. 8,000 Redcoats, 8,000 Redcoats, see how they run, see how they run. And it's about Jackson going to New Orleans and the Tennessee Volunteers come at. That's how Tennessee Volunteers got their name, in the Battle of New Orleans, you see. And we sing it twice. And we drink a lot of blackberry fizz, don't we? Good cake, peanuts, I don't know. We have a good patriotic time with all that. So right over here is Judge Russell's courtroom. That's where we do that. So here's a display about Andrew Jackson. Now, this title here is Segregation in the Legal System. You think about all the hard times in the 20th century of this community, our whole country, in the civil rights movement, segregation of certain public facilities. After the Civil War, 1415 of Memphis assured black men the right to vote, not black women, not white women, not till 1920, 50 years later. Think about that. That's happening this year. In fact, later on this year, the suffrage memorial is going to be installed over on the riverside of the law school. Paula Casey's doing that this fall. And you'll hear about all the people that participated on that 100-plus year battle of getting women the right to vote. It's an incredible story. But you get up to the days of Boss Crump is what they called it, and Robert Church Jr. and George W. Lee, the separate but equal. Well, the separate but equal wasn't equal. It was very unequal. It was separate. And, so I think there's a lot of still lasting damages during that era of the 20th century, far more damaging than some of the things in the 19th century in our country. And you look at some of these court cases that came through this Shelby County Courthouse, whether it was for street railway access or buses, let's say, parks, movie theaters, lunch counters, a lot of sit-ins. We, a couple years ago, did a historical marker on Main Street for the Lee sisters, the most arrested family in America, according to Jet Magazine in the 1960s, for their nonviolent, peaceful sit-ins. Dr. King was all about nonviolence, not throwing rocks and burning down buildings, One of my favorite stories here is Russell Sugarman. Russell Sugarman, Mr. Ratlin, I think it was Marvin Ratlin, had the first segregated law firm in Memphis. And old Sputnik Monroe, y'all like wrestling, don't you? Y'all, WWE and all that stuff, Jerry Lawler and all this. Well, Sputnik Monroe was a wrestler. Roscoe Brumbaugh was his name. He actually got his trunks and boots and jacket in the Memphis Rock and Soul Museum. Because on Beale Street, Beale Street was the main street of black America the first half of the century. Lieutenant George W. Lee, the black political operative, said it was a mile of vice and commercial ambition owned by the Jews, policed by the whites, and enjoyed by the Negroes. It's a place where all that in-migration, where the blacks could freely assemble without being harassed in public. They couldn't go to Main Street in the segregated days till the 1960s, you see. Whites could go down to Beale. So in the wrestling arenas, public arenas, segregated seating. The Mid-South Coliseum was the first public assembly building built in Memphis, 1964, with the integration in design. Same access, same seating, same restroom, same concession stand. That's what's one of the important things about the Mid-South Coliseum. Well, in the wrestling days in the 50s, the blacks had to sit up in the upper balconies, and like in the theaters and stuff. So Roscoe Brumbaugh didn't like that, Sputnik Monroe, and he let his black fans come down, and the white rednecks fans would say, "You're nothing but a communist. You're a damn Sputnik." after the communist satellite. That's how he got his nickname. He kind of liked that. And the black fans really rallied around him. And he could walk down Beale Street anytime he wanted to. Well, some of the white folks didn't like that. And one night, he got arrested inside a black-owned bar on Beale Street for disorderly conduct because he was a white person in a bar after midnight. And that was his disorderly conduct, you know. And he was so persnickety about it, he was the first white person to have a black attorney represent him. And that was Russell Sugarman, too. You see, he came to court with a black attorney just to keep on pushing the cause, you see. A wrestler, Sputnik Monroe. Now, come on. And I got to meet that guy. And later on, a lot of those public cases were heard all the way to the Supreme Court. They wouldn't open the public swimming pools. The Park Commission didn't open them in 63 and 64 because they didn't want white and black kids swimming together. Okay, but the Supreme Court of the United States said, your desegregation plan is not fast enough. You got to do faster than that. It was a 10-year plan, you know. You know, in 1961, we had 13 first graders desegregate 4 city schools in the first grade. And they're going to do that a year at a time and grow them up that way. And that wasn't fast enough either. Memphis 13, we've done historical markers for them. 1959, the Memphis State 8. You see, the first 8 black students in Memphis State. So there's markers up all around the city about some of these occasions. Here, this is a great box right here. And the conclusion of the swimming pools. So in 1965, here's how Memphis desegregated the swimming pool, public swimming pools. Crazy. White kids swam on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. White kids swam on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Black kids on Wednesday. And the pools were closed on Thursdays for their weekly cleaning. White kids back on Friday. Does that make the hair raise up on your arm? Seriously, I mean, okay, but we've come a long way since then. We still got a long way to go. But just think of where we were when I was growing up, when Willie was growing up. Some of y'all are, you millennials here. Millennials, don't remember that. All right, let's go down this way. But there's a whole lot of important cases that have come through here. Go ahead. You didn't bring it. Oh, you brought fun for everybody, didn't you? Come on. Disorderly. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That was a great term.
I've never heard that before. It's just basically.
Yeah. Oh, what was that term? Mockery. But it had like 2 other adjectives with it too. It was a great phrase about the mockery. Yes. Just real quick here. Here's that same plaque that's over in the hallway of Hale and Rogers, the commissioners, Perkins, Joy, Colbert, Walsh, Allen. Walsh is a huge wholesale grocer. We talk about cotton and hardwood here in the river, but man, my study the last few weeks we were a huge wholesale grocery business for this whole area of the country just because of distribution coming through here. Right here, you have 2 plaques that were put here in 2013 during the bicentennial years of the War of 1812, which is come this way, folks. That's the doorbell ringing. You get too close to the door. That's not a public access anymore. You can see what a hallway would look like without all the scanning equipment and everything. The beautiful entry here. In fact, back in the middle of the century, this was a storage room for boxes and furniture. It's a nice storage room, isn't it? So in the bicentennial of the War of 1812, the Piamingo chapter raised money and went and did investigation and research and found 32 veterans of the War of 1812 that are buried in Shelby County. Very surrounded. In fact, last November, 5 years later, an obelisk is in Elmwood Cemetery. I believe the 16 of those are buried in Elmwood Cemetery. We dedicated that last November in Elmwood Cemetery. Nathaniel Anderson, I portrayed him at Elmwood Cemetery. His War of 1812 soldier that later became one of the leaders of what's now our Chamber of Commerce. Bunton, Bunton area town. Andrew Jackson Donaldson, Marcus Winchester's our first mayor. Clement McDaniel is also a veteran of the Revolutionary War as well. So a lot of great names right here later on. And then we go this way to this plaque. Hey, Isaac Shelby, who our county's named for, who this building was named for before Judge Jeremy Bailey's name came on it. He wasn't a Memphian, he wasn't a Tennessean, he was the governor of Kentucky. But he and Andrew Jackson negotiated what's 6.8 million acres of land that's now 21 counties west of the Tennessee River in West Tennessee in 1818 on a, 15-year plan of annual installments of $20,000 each, 4.5 cents an acre. So here's the only recognition of Isaac Shelby in Shelby County. This portrait over here from Jackson came from a judge's office who was retiring in the juvenile courts, and he knew we had a little things about Jackson in here and stuff, so it got brought over here and we put it on the easel. We didn't want to drill holes in the wall because it just wouldn't fit in any one of these little panels in here, so we put it on the easel. And then here's the boss Crump. Standy we did in 210. Came from Holly Springs, Mississippi, ran for mayor, won in 1910 on a close vote. At that time, the mayor terms were 2 years each. 1909, 1911, 1913. By 1915, he was not enforcing the law of prohibition. The state had a prohibition law. The way he would enforce it here, the police would go down, give them a ticket. They pay their ticket off on Monday morning. They'd be back open for business, you know. So it's a revenue producer for the city. Well, the state just didn't like that. Crump just thought, well, that's a law for the state. That's not a law for Tennessee, for Memphis or Shelby County. So he got ousted as mayor in this courthouse. His office is on the other side over there. We'll show it at the end of the tour. But he was ousted as mayor. The state came in and ousted Crump as mayor. Well, it was an election year that year, so why not? He'll run again. He hadn't been convicted of anything, so he could legally run for mayor. Now think about it. About 10 years ago, we had 3 mayors in 2 years when Harrington resigned, and then Myron Lowry, and then A.C. Wharton got elected. Back in 1982, we had 4 mayors in 1 year. When Chandler resigned, J. O. Patterson, our first black mayor of Memphis, but he wasn't elected, is by succession, and then Wallace Madewell and Dick Hackett got elected mayor. Well, in 1916, we had 4 mayors in 1 day in Memphis, Tennessee. And the way that happened out is he ran for mayor, and of course he won, and now what do we do? He's been thrown out as mayor, now he's running back in. And so January 1st came along when they normally had to take the oath of office. And so it goes to court for 6 weeks. And finally on February 22nd, 1916, the court decides Crump can legally be mayor. So William Tyler McLean had been serving as the temporary mayor since Crump had been ousted. So we start today with William Tyler McLean as mayor. Crump gets sworn in as mayor, collects his $730 back pay, and resigns. Utley, the vice mayor, gets sworn in, collects his $600 in back pay, and resigns, probably because Trump told him to. And then Thomas Ashcroft gets elected mayor by the city commission. 4 mayors 1 day in about 6 hours. That also kind of happened again in 1939 and 1940 when they wanted Walter Chandler to be mayor, but he was a congressman, and you can't run for mayor and be in Congress according to the laws of that time. So Crump ran as a placeholder and won. And then on January 1st, he got sworn in on the train station and resigned and went to the Sugar Bowl. And the next day, the city commission had Chandler in as the new mayor because he was served out his term in Congress. So our politics have always been like this, if you don't like our politics, let's say. But Crump did a lot of good things for a lot of Memphis. And the more I read about him, I don't like to say anything bad about anybody, but you start, whoa, a lot of, yeah, you could vote. And he paid the poll tax for a lot of black citizens, as long as you voted for what he said, Stuff like, if you went out into Mississippi and tried to vote, you'd probably get killed. This is the courtroom that The People versus Larry Flint was filmed in. And the movie that was in town last year, Banks, something Banks. There was a TV, there was a movie, they used this, Brian Banks. Here too. Now look how they adapted, from the window units over here and the radiators. We'll go to another courtroom that has radiators. And look, broken chair. How nice. But see how they incorporated the HVAC into that panel there and then covered it up with a nice trim and molding in the 1980s. So that's pretty cool right there, I think. Look at the paneling in here. The sconces, that's Minerva's head in the light sconces there. The bench, actually bulletproof the benches. I'm not going to shoot the guy in the foot anyway. No, I'm not going to shoot anybody. Sorry, don't say that. State of Tennessee seal here. We'll talk about the seal upstairs. But this is a nice courtroom here, big enough to do some of the filming in. So, and you see how the air conditioning's in here, a little bit different than the hallway. Here you'll see a directory of, you got Circuit Court, Chancery Court, Probate Court, and General Sessions. You can go to the probate clerk's office and plop down $11.95 and get a copy of Elvis's will if you want to. In one of those display cases downstairs, there was a copy of Elvis's when he bought Graceland. Trustees, yeah, there you go, trustee. That's the word I was looking for. You're good for something, aren't you? $37,000. Will. $11.95 plus tax, I reckon. Look, when you come by here, look inside this elevator cage here, or cab. It's called the bird cage elevator. Of course, it's not in operation anymore, but back when they opened elevators in the early 1900s, people were scared of them. And of course, you look at all the old movies, always got a guy in there running the elevators. But you'll see the real nice ornamentation all on the side here. It looks like a bird cage. And apparently nobody's been in there since 2001. There's a newspaper down here saying that. Let's go in the Supreme Court courtroom here real quick. Now, you don't have to sit down if you don't want to, but if you can, if you want to.
Disciplinary hearings here too. Supreme Court.
Now, back in the 1980s, when they were renovating the building, there was a request by the Supreme Court of the state of Tennessee to dedicate a courtroom for their use when they come down here a couple of times a year. It's more convenient sometimes to bring 5 judges down here and all the lawyers and witnesses and prisoners and records and everything. So this bench is big enough for 5 chairs when they meet in session here. A lot of times they go to the University of Memphis Law School because they recently renovated that old courtroom up there on the 3rd level, and they use it. If you can look at a little split right here in the glass frame right there, but you can see up about 8 feet to see where the skylight is that comes. There used to be natural skylight shining into here. Imagine a drop ceiling in here and Formica on this, you know. So this was actually where the Memphis Bar Association had their offices. If you look at this building, all the offices are on the exterior of the building all the way around. All the courtrooms are on the interior to block the street noise, because a lot of people back 100 years ago, 80 years ago, before air conditioning, had their windows open. And they didn't want all that street noise affecting the court hearings. So that's how you had the whole window system right there. Here's the state of Tennessee seal, February 6, 1796. You see the Roman numeral 16 right above the shaft of wheat there. We were the 16th state to join the Union totally, the 3rd after the original 13 colonies. You had the 13, Vermont, Kentucky, Tennessee, and we grew in a balanced growth like Ohio, then Louisiana, then Indiana, then Mississippi, then Illinois, then Alabama, now we're up to 22, 11 free states, 11 slave states. Missouri wanted to come in, so Maine broke off from Massachusetts in the Missouri Compromise to get us to 24, then Arkansas came in, then we got into a civil war. But we're the first territory to become a state. We broke off from North Carolina, and we actually filed for it on February 6th. We became a state June 1st. You had to have like 60,000 citizens in the state constitution. And for a long time, there was a state of Franklin up there in northeast Tennessee, a little bitty state trying to wean itself away from North Carolina, but it didn't get recognized by the country. So you might hear about the state of Franklin and say, nope, state of Tennessee was 16. The plow, the shaft of wheat, the cotton plant, the boat for commerce. You got agriculture and commerce is what built this state, built this city here when you think about the 18th and 19th centuries. American flag, state flag, nice light fixtures here. And this is used a couple of times a year at the most, and then there's other exceptional trials. I remember the Beale Street case was heard in here because there's so many witnesses or so much media attention. So every once in a while, this gets set aside from another courtroom because there's a little bit more space, a bigger jury box or something like that. One time, 2 years ago, my tour was on the same Thursday that the judges were having their Christmas party. So we got to come in here and eat with them. You know, sometimes the divorces, judges or attorneys will come in here and have a session in here outside the courtroom. They can get in this one and the next courtroom we're going to. So we're going to go to the antique courtroom right now, then to the law library, then we'll be done. Different than the 2 courtrooms we've been in, huh? Yeah. This is called the antique courtroom. This is the original floor. Rubber tile here, no glue in that floor. All pieced together like a jigsaw puzzle. If you knew how to put it together. You can see those are artificial radiators right now, but that's how the radiator heat would come in here. It'd open the windows. Now, all the HVAC comes in from underneath those medallions. You can see somebody needs to change the filter up there where the air comes in at. This is the original bench here, the original witness stand. Can you imagine sitting here and the jury's right there, seeing every sweat and every tremble, right there. There's the judge. Over here is a roll-top desk. I believe it's from 1911 or 1912, a real old roll-top desk. If you want to come over and look at it, roll it up. When we came in here earlier today, we had to get a microwave out of there. Again, this is not there's a couple of empty courtrooms in here, and this is used at times for mediation or little conferences, like a conference room. They bring those chairs up all around the table here. I remember one year when they were donating food, cans of food for folks, they brought them all in here, and this is where you brought your canned food to give for a food drive or something like that. I don't know about that table. I know that says so on it. There's a plaque on it, right there, right?
Yeah.
1911, right there. This is original, and that's in the documentation. That's probably an 80-year-old table. I bet it's heavy. Speaking, this is the Shelby County Division of Courts here. The federal courts are over at Poplar in front in the federal building. The city courts are over here at 201 Poplar, because everybody thinks that's the jail. The jail is actually at 225 Poplar. When you get on my trivia contest, you better know that answer. 201 is the courtroom. 201 is what everybody calls you. You're going to 201, you're not in good shape. The juvenile courts are obviously down on Adams Avenue in Victorian Village, and the bankruptcy courts are right there. That kind of gets you where all the courtrooms, the various kinds of courtrooms. It's a maze, ain't it? And you got to get to the right spot. We're going to now walk to the law library. When you walk in there, we've been on marble floors and marble walls, and it's been kind of echoey and everything. When you walk into this law library, it's like walking into the sanctuary of a church. It's just quiet like that, with the carpeting and the big windows and the skylights. You can't be too rowdy in there either. In that law library, there's 65,000 volumes in there of all the old law books, and there's also access to Nexus Lexis, free access to Nexus Lexis and the Westlaw up there, because everything's been computerized. The law librarian does not have a law degree. He has a library degree, because he's not here to interpret the law. He's there to get you to figure out all those numbers to get to the right book or the right section of the computer. Then you go get a lawyer and pay for your services, or public defender or whatever. So Gary Johnson, I think, is our 5th law librarian in the long history of the law library, about 120 years. He's in today. He's got a yellow bow tie on, so you'll recognize him. And he's been around a long time and very helpful in there. And we might walk up on one of the landings and look at some old city directories. A very unusual collection up there you can walk right up to. You can access that law library 8:30 to 5 or 4:30, Monday through Friday. You don't have to be a lawyer. Don't have to be a judge. You can walk in there. Anybody can, as long as you don't have a gun and a camera. Judges and their attorneys I think judges and their assistants can get 24-hour access. But right now, most judges and attorneys and everybody's got everything on computer, wouldn't you think? Then there's one book over here in the law library, I got to find this law and win a case,
You can check them out, actually.
Okay, well then, you got to be nice to Gary to do that, right? Okay, well, when we go in there, we're going to walk in and kind of look around. Now, the first landing we come to, if you remember the scene from the movie The Client, that's when they took a break in one of the sessions, and Tommy Lee Jones was the guy, the FBI guy or whatever from Louisiana. They had a scene up there on that landing. It's going to make you go back and watch the movie now, isn't it? That always happens to me when I come in here. And then we'll go into the reading room, and then we'll go up on the landing, and then we'll be done. So let's go this way. We walk in the doors there. The doors are 2.5 inches wide by 8 feet tall. Solid Cuban mahogany wood, too. This is the Judge Andrew O. Holmes reading room, who is a lawyer from Memphis who became a state Supreme Court judge. Right here's his portrait. And then over on the west wall over there, you see the 2 Randolph pictures there. They're very instrumental in getting the law library to occur as services for our community way back over 100 years ago. And to this day, there's no county budget for the law library. The fees are applied on court cases that pay. So in other words, the criminals are funding the law library, if we can say it that way. It's like when you go to another city and you have a $99 room that ends up costing $150 because the airport fee and the convention center fee and all that. It's just that add-on fee tacked on to court cases in this building to sustain all these books, all these services, all this free internet and everything else. This is a reading room here. There's no meetings allowed to happen in here. Usually when I come in here, there'll be a lawyer or two sitting on one of these couches reading the funny papers they got over here in the newspapers. But it's just a place. Imagine if you're a lawyer out in East Memphis, you come downtown for a 10 o'clock case in the morning. It doesn't meet again until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Where do you go? You can't go hang out at a bar, or you can, I guess, but somebody won't see you at that bar. Now he's drinking during a trial, but this is a good quiet spot to come. This is my second favorite spot in downtown Memphis to get away from everybody. You don't know when I'm here. Some of the previous law librarians' pictures on the wall here. Mary Sue Boucher always wore fancy hats. Her husband was a judge, Beverly Boucher. Beverly is a men's name. Orly Mitchell was a assistant law librarian for 50 years. She passed away like in 2010. I met her right when we or towards the end of that. We had the dedication. Her picture's outside on the wall over there. So law librarian's a pretty solid, established job. Yes, ma'am.
If this is your second favorite place, what's your first?
I guess we'll go to it next, right? We're going there right now. So let's go this way.
Let's look up your house, Jimmy, and see who was living there.
Now, this is the newspaper. Now, come up right here. These are bound volumes of the Commercial Appeal by month from January 66 to 1971. 6 years. Why would they have those in here? I mean, they used to bind these all the time like this. And so I'm just kind of turning through. You look at all these ads in here. I mean, you can get lost in one of these forever, but you're looking up stuff. I came in here a couple of months ago and looked up on Larry Finch in the 1969 when he signed with the Tigers. It wasn't until May till that was announced. And it was on the third page, right next to a shoe ad, Larry Finch. So here I go, oh, looky here. I go, looky here, Willie, look at this. Little Al tames a Spartan, 54-53. Jimmy Ogle, the smallest player on the court, led spirited Memphis University School, 54-53 victory over White Station Spartans. We won our first 23 games that year, by the way. I was an all-state basketball player. So I put this in there. I put this in there to find. You see how hard it took me to get to it. You asked me where you put it so I could get to it real quick and not fumble through it. Well, one day I was doing that and I was going through here, and this is kind of the ups and downs of my life. See this other one right here? I saved it because I flipped through here and I went boom. Rights today for Dr. L.C. Ogle. 4 days before that basketball game, my daddy looked at me one night and said, "Catch me, I'm falling." He fell down and died in the living room. I thought he was going to the hospital to deliver a baby. So that's kind of my senior year in high school. And I was in here all chippy talking, and all of a sudden, dunk. But no, my mother, we had a great family, and my mother had a great second marriage, and I'm a lucky guy is all I'm going to say. But just you look at the ups and downs of your life, you start going through these pages, you never know what you're going to find, so be careful. But in fact, this last year, they did a thing out at the MUS lobby, and they had the great players of MUS, and I'm a great player from 1970 this year.
Great.
How about that? So these things are heavy, but you could come in here from 66 to 71 and just get lost, not only in just the ads like Chip Bark Chevrolet or Lowenstein's, but I'm usually looking at sports, but you come in here and you see headlines or Overland Park Expressway issue or other, unfortunately, April 5th, 1968, somebody tore it out. That's the fallacy. That's the day after the King assassination. You'll see the headlines, that headline page. You might have the man, we did picked up, July 21st, 69. We could probably get the landing on the moon, couldn't we? Let's just do that real quick and see. Oh!
Come on now. You didn't just do that. Did you?
I swear, there is nothing. That is wrong. I didn't do that thing. I used to tell me pick that thing up.
Do it. Oh, sorry.
Well, anyway, weird things happen. How about that?
That's incredible.
Now, I was hearing about Neil Armstrong. He wouldn't accept any fees, like $1 million for his interviews. When they did the parade for him, like, bring everybody up here. We had our women's soccer team come back, and it's about me, and F the president, all this stuff. It's like, and these guys back, there's 400,000 people that put that guy on the moon, And he was so humble. He went back to being a chemistry teacher at the University of Cincinnati. And they wanted to name the building for him. He wouldn't let them do it. There's other better chemistry professors here. Why you want to name a building after me? Well, you first got me on the moon. And Buzz Aldrin, the second guy, comes to town a lot. He's a friend of Pat Taggart. He comes to the blues balls and stuff like that. So we still get to see Buzz Aldrin. He's like in his 80s now. But I'm going to leave that open like that. It kind of scares me there. Now, here's the best spot over here. That was fun, wasn't it? Come over here to this landing. These are city directories dating back to 1859. So you can come in here, just like we are right now. Pick one up. I'm not going to do any miracle open up. It's like Karnak Magnificent here now. But you can bring out 1870 through 1879, set them on this table. And it tells you what businesses are where, everything on streets and everything. If you're looking for addresses on streets, identify buildings, who occupied that building and all that. I mean, these are online, 1859 to 1943, on the Register's website. You can flip page by page online, register.tn.shelby.us. Just Shelby County Register, Google. and it's kind of hard to do that, but you can come up here and it's real easy to come up and get 4 or 5 and put them out and sequence an occupancy of a building or look up people's name on the residences, businesses. Again, this was 1889 all the way through 1942, and then you see how much bigger the city grows and everything. I bet they don't publish these anymore, do they? They don't probably make the printed copies anymore with all the digitization and everything. It'd probably be about this thick right now, you know, but this is my favorite spot. Second to the reading room, but this, because you come over here and you get curious about buildings. Now think about this too, when you're looking up addresses. In 1905, we changed, we did a big reset of Memphis. The city kind of started down by the Pyramid area, the old Pinch area, and grew southerly along the riverfront with transportation. The riverboats coming in, the cobblestones. Then in the middle of the century, the 19th century, then you know the railroads come in the latter part, and then we go all the way down to Fort Pickering. And then in 1899, we turn our back on the river and expand all the way out to Cooper Avenue, almost to where Overton Park is. Quadruple the size of our city, but we start our east-west grid rather than a north-south grid of the city going out that way. We bought the land for Overton Park in 1900 and Riverside Park and started working on the parkways during that time. That became the outer rim of the city for a while. Annexed Binghamton like 1919 to Graham in 1929. The first 17 years Memphis State is open, it's outside the city limits, you know. White Station 1950 on out that way, Raleigh, Fraser 1957, Whitehaven 68, you know, Hickory Hill, all that. And we grow out like that. But when you come back to downtown, so you got from 1844 to 1850, you had a town called South Memphis from Union to basically the train stations. We merged with them in 1850, then the Chickasaw City or Fort Pickering in 1868. We had a lot of duplicate names of streets and addresses, and by the Pyramid area there, Front Street was called Chickasaw. By the convention center, it was called Mississippi Road, and south of Union was called Shelby. That became Front Street the whole way. They had to consolidate names and get the duplication out and duplication of numbers. So they brought the east-west line up to Madison Avenue. We do the Madison Avenue walk. So south of Madison Avenue is like South Front Street. North is one north, you know, going that way, all the way out to say East High School and then Walnut Grove. That's your north-south boundary lines. And then the way that, and the people didn't want to change it because I'm from 1870, 1880, 1890, I'm 22 Madison, and now I have to be 58 Madison because they changed the numbering system too. And people didn't want to change their stationery or their business cards, and they've been in business for a long time, and so they just wouldn't do it. Some wouldn't do it. And the way they got the people to cooperate was they said, well, the post office can't knowingly deliver mail to a wrong address. So the post office stopped delivering their mail until they changed their address to the new address. And that's how they got them to change. Think about that. Only in the movies and in Memphis, they say, you know. So that's kind of a neat story there. But that's when you look at the numbering system. So you get in these books, the way when you get, say, 1904, 1905, we get to 1906, all the numbers have changed. And so you got to kind of do a back reference from the street corner. When you're going down this way, you go main and front and count the building numbers to get, and you see the same occupancy, and that's how you kind of judge it. So some of those buildings are still standing now. And when you read the Paul Kopic books, he always refers to 1905 numbering system was this, because a lot of buildings he talks about span the change in that too. There's a lot of little things like where the cobblestones came from, or the auction block up here, all this stuff. There's a lot of, some intentional misconception for political reasons and activist reasons, but some just, wait a minute, stop a second. Here's the truth. And whenever I tell a story, I might tell the story, but then I'll tell the truth. I said, that's a lie. But it's a good story to tell. But you kind of.
Street in my neighborhood named Summit, and the people that live on it say it's Summit because it's the highest point in town.
Could be at that time. You know, High Point Terrace here was the highest point as we annexed out. As you further go out east, we elevate towards the Smoky Mountains, right? But when High Point was annexed then in the 1940s, it was the highest point at the time. But there's some places further out east now that are higher. So you got things like that that changed because we annexed. In fact, the highest piece of ground in Shelby County is actually the landfill out of Shelby and Malone out there in southeast Memphis. The landfill that goes up really high on the property right below S-Box down there. Where I used to store the Zip and Pip and stuff, you know. So yeah, there's oddities like that, and namings of streets are really interesting. In fact, you go to the High Point neighborhood. Everybody been there? Mm-hmm. Philwood, Johnwood, Charleswood, Sherwood, Kenwood, all named for children. of the developer, you see. And Philwood is for Phyllis, a girl, not Phil, a boy, you know, things like that. But developers got like Sherwood Forest area, they named all that, Bay Marion and Fire Tuck and all that. So some of these subdivisions, you'll see theme named or just put their family names on them. You know, Davies Manor Plantation out there, and the Vanderschaffs own some of that land development. There's Patricia Ellen Drive, and you know, and stuff like that. They named for family members, you know. All right, let's go down one more stop here. We're going all the way down. Well, we're just one floor down. So we're going to end up right here. Here's how I got real smart back in 2010. I got asked by Ed Williams to be on the committee to do the tours for the Centennial celebration. So we're up in a meeting with lawyers and clerks and stuff like that. And they said, we just can't figure out which room was Boss Crump's or Mayor Crump's room, the first room he occupied. Can we put you in charge of that? I said, well, sure, I'll try to impress somebody here. So what did I do when we left that meeting in that Supreme Court courtroom? I came right to that landing, opened up the 1911 directory. Room 203 was the mayor's office, and there's room 203 right there. I don't tell nobody nothing. I come back to the next meeting next week. Got it, 203. Man, we've been trying to find that for a year. You're sharp. I'm not going to divulge my secrets. I finally did it a week later, but it's like, duh. That's it right there. It's a panel room now, but again, offices are all in here. You might remember, some of these millennials might remember the newsstand that was here when back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, all the newspapers from all the cities, and you had to have a disabled or a handicap impaired person running it in a government-owned building. I mean, you could give them a 1 for 20, or I don't know how you figure that out, but he later died or something. Of course, the magazines and newspapers went away. Used to have World News Mart over here, you know. And this became this nice little luncheonette in here. I mean, it's got a captive audience for sure. You don't want to go out and walk down the street, but good little small sandwiches stuff and lemonade and tea and stuff like it. It'd be a good place y'all to eat right now. Lemonade? You kidding me? Yes, sir, we did. An hour ago. Very good. A+. See how important some things are to people around here? You never know. So this kind of concludes. If anybody has any more goofy questions like that, I'll be glad to entertain that. Tomorrow, the boat ride's at 2:30. It's $20 for adults, $10 for children. Starts boarding at 1:30 down there at Bill Street Landing, the Island Queen. It'll be a fun ride. Willie be filming. We'll be talking all about the river and the skyline and river. 90 minutes, 8 miles, 90 minutes.
Any beverages on this?
A full service bar.